Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I have a couple of things I want to say before we start the video. I want to apologize for being absent for, the entirety of January, February, March, and April, and probably like half of May, depending how long it takes me to add this video. As I'm filming it, it's 5th of May. I want to explain. So basically, in the previous video, I was already kind of getting sick. I was sick the entirety of January and like majority of December. I ended up in ICU. It was bad. So I was like super sick for quite a while. And after I got better, I went back to work and also school started. By the way, I work full-time. And I'm also a full-time university student in my first year of a master's degree. So both of those things have been kicking my butt. And I've just been trying to get back into the rhythm of the normal life. And by the time we had finals in uni. And so I felt too overwhelmed to film. And then the finals passed. And another little secret, I don't live alone. I live with both of my parents and my little sister. So it's practically impossible to find the moment of silence when I'm alone to film. And finally I have. I've been wanting to film for like a month. I've had the ability to film except the environment. But I hope those things don't reflect badly on your opinion of me. Some of them I couldn't control, some of them I could, but I'm back. Hopefully I won't be gone as much anymore, but I can't promise anything considering the fact that I don't live alone and I have no clue when will be the next time I will be able to film. Also, editing is another thing that's kicking my butt. It takes me a long while to edit videos, so let's not make it too long and get into the video. So the video will be everything I read in the first 4 months of 2026, aka January, February, March, and April. And spoiler alert, I originally wanted to make it 3 months, but then I ended up not reading anything in April. Like literally nothing. I was in the worst slump I've been in for years. Finally, I found a book that got me out of it. I'm reading again, have been for the past like 3 or 4 days, but before that, for like the entirety of the month, I was just like, I read one of the best books I've ever read, and then I was just like, no, everything compared to that just sucks. So yeah, I included April, even though originally I didn't want to because I didn't read anything in it. So hopefully we will make it like a trend, everything I read in the 4 months, 3 times a year. Okay, so let us begin with January, aka the month that I was sick and stuck in the ICU for half of it. The first book that I read this month was actually First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. I gave it 3.75 stars. It's kind of like a little thriller. To me, it read more like an adventure rather than a thriller, but it says it's a thriller. So basically we're following our main character, Evie, and she's pretending to be somebody she's not. And she's like engaged or married or whatever, together with this guy Ryan. And it turns out she's not who she is, and the drama ensues, and she's kind of like a spy, I would guess, without like spoiling it too much, without specifying too much. I enjoyed this book a lot, actually. The part that I didn't like was the ending. It felt a little too nice. The ending, a little too neat. I know some people wouldn't call that neat, but I would. I want more messy in my endings, especially when the story itself is so inherently messy. I kind of want it to like fit. But funnily enough, this book I actually almost read last year rather than this year. I started reading it on the 31st of December, and I had literally only the epilogue left. But I had to go to celebrate New Year's, and so I ended up finishing it on the 1st of January, so technically it counts towards this year. And this was one of the last times I felt great in that month. The next book I read was That's My Name by Megan Lally. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's another mystery slash thriller, where it's a dual POV. We get a girl that has amnesia, and I mean, we assume that she got kidnapped by a guy who claims to be her father. We're assuming that because like the vibes are very sinister, right? So like we assume she's kidnapped. And then we get another POV of a guy whose girlfriend got kidnapped, and everybody in the town assumes it's him who did it. Everyone thinks he killed her and covered it up. And he's basically the only one trying to find out what actually happened rather than putting the entire blame on him. And we get the story of how it all unravels. I will say, I kind of took down an entire star just for stupid ass references to like Lizzo and other pop culture stuff. I love it. I do love pop culture. Not in my books though. I personally think it ages the books really badly. I don't like playlists in the beginning of books. I don't like Taylor Swift mentioned or Lizzo. Just don't do that. And besides the playlist part, it's always such a bad playlist, and always there are people on Spotify who make playlists that are 10 times better and more fitting for the book. So like, why even try? However, I did really enjoy the ending. My jaw was on the floor. That just for that ending, even though I gave it 3.5, just for that ending simply, I believe everyone who loves a good thriller should read it. Next one I read was People Like Us by Dana Meal. I gave it 3.75 stars. However, I don't remember much of it. I'm pretty confident there's like it's a private school setting. There's like 5 best friends, I think, and they on a Halloween party find a dead body of their classmate whom they didn't really know that much. And then the next day, our main character, she's a scholarship student, but she's also a part of this friend group. She's basically being blackmailed by the dead girl. The blackmail itself is like a secret of hers that we don't find out until much later in the book. That leverage is used against her in a way to make her turn on all of her best friends. And we just follow along as she simultaneously basically ruins each and every friendship in her life and tries to uncover what actually happened to the dead girl. So there's that. I saw all the twists coming like from a mile away. Some of the things were disappointing, but I really enjoyed the writing style and I enjoyed the story in and of itself. So there's that. Now moving on to February, I didn't read that much in January, but I was sick, so. First, this month was a little odd choices all around, I'll say, in terms of reading material for me. So the first book I read was Before I Ever Met You by Karina Halley. I gave it 2.75. I didn't like it. I'm gonna be honest. It's basically age gap relationship slash he's your boss slash he's your dad's best friend slash you have a traumatic past and also a son. I wouldn't recommend that book to anyone actually. I don't think it was a good book at all. Half the time it felt like I was reading fan fiction, and a bad one at that, because fan fiction can be good. This wasn't. And half the time it felt like I was watching the most cheesy ass rom-com. But the thing is, those two together, don't get me started. Moving on. Hate Mail by Donna Marchetti. I gave this one 3 stars. So basically you follow a dual POV. It's a rom-com. So basically, you know this like male friend thing that you do in school? Well, personally, I never sent out the letters, but apparently in the US you do. Odd. But like usually that lasts for only like 2 to 3 letters maximum. But for these two, who absolutely berated each other in the letters, it lasts ages, literal ages, up until he just ghosts her and she goes out with this guy, but then the letters resume and the rest is history. Stalking. A lot of stalking on both parts, so technically they deserve each other, but it triggered me because we're supposed to believe that they will live happily ever after. Girl, I don't mind stalking when it's like a horror or thriller or mystery, but not when it's a rom-com. Yeah, they're both walking red flags, so I guess they're perfect for each other, but it was a little difficult to be happy for them. So next book I read was Lying About Last Summer by Sue Wallman. I gave it 3.75 stars. So our main character has lost her sister to homicide, and she was technically at the scene, but she was hiding and she was terrified and she was like in a frozen state. She couldn't do shit and she blames herself, and then a while later she goes on a summer camp, and it's near where she used to live, where her sister died. And we just get her story. It's a summer camp for like grieving kids, and more of her story and feelings gets unraveled whilst we find out what actually happened to her sister. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the setting. It's just some of the characters pissed me off too much. Not all of them being the bad guys. Girl. So yeah, that just annoyed me a bit, and that's why I kind of pushed it out. But I enjoyed the book overall, especially the summer camp setting. Probably not the most appropriate time to read it, aka February, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. The next one is probably the most questionable of them all. Death to Valentine's Day by Catherine Cowley's, and I gave it 1.75. I did not like this one at all. I actually hated it. It's a novella. It's like from a collection of novellas that a bunch of rom-com authors wrote for Valentine's Day, but I decided to read this one. It was ex's brother and like age gap. Bad. Awful. Brother, this guy stinks. That's all I gotta say. I'm not gonna recommend this to anyone. I mean, you can read it for your own entertainment, I guess, because I guess it is entertaining on how bad it is. And then we move on to March. The first thing I read in March was The Exorcism of Fairies by J.L. Vampa. I gave it 4.5 stars. Finally, we exceeded the 4-star mark. We're in Ireland. I'm pretty sure it's the 90s, maybe 80s. Dublin, there's a plague where people die and there's flowers inside of them. Which I know sounds very Tumblr core. Hear me out. Our main character, we have dual POV. Our main character, PhD student, also works as a morticianer, trying to figure out secretly what is happening, and she also sells cadavers to a secret society who's fighting the plague for not money, tools, morticianers' tools. And our other main character is a part of that secret society and also professor on campus, and the rest is history. And she also becomes his TA, so there's that. I actually kind of enjoyed all of it except the ending. I would rant about it if I could give you spoilers, but I can't. So the only thing I'm gonna say is that the ending dissatisfied me very much. The next book is All In, and then we also have Bad Blood and 12, all by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, third, fourth books in the Natural series and the novella. I gave it 3.5, 4.25, and 3.75 accordingly. The first two books I'm pretty sure I rated like 3 and 3.5. I can't really say much about the third, fourth, and the novella without giving away the first two, so I'm just gonna talk about the first book. We basically have this girl, Cassie. She has a natural gift of profiling, and she is discovered by an FBI agent who recruits young teenagers into this very secretive program that uses teenagers with natural skills and talents to solve cold cases, basically. We have like Dean, who's also a profiler. We have Michael, who's like an emotion reader. Leah, who's a lie detector. And Sloane, who's like basically Spencer Reed. King Encyclopedia, whatever. It's very Criminal Minds-esque, and I love it because I love Criminal Minds. It's just Criminal Minds, but making young adult. I think if you liked Criminal Minds, you would enjoy it a lot. I think if you've ever read Truly Devious and you enjoyed that, you will love it. And if you ever read The Inheritance Games and you didn't like it that much, you will love this. I read The Inheritance Games, the original trilogy. I didn't read any of the additional books. I didn't actually like it. The Naturals I loved. So give it a try if you don't mind the young adultness of it all, but to me, that just means no smut. So I was only happier for it. The next book I read was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. So we have Nora and Charlie. Nora is like a publisher. She goes on a small town vacation with her sister, who's very opposite of Nora and very spontaneous and chaotic. And there she meets her business rival, editor Charlie. And then they end up having more in common than they thought. Charlie, here's the thing. I read 4 Emily Henry books: Beach Read, People We Meet on Vacation, Book Lovers, and funny story, I don't care that much about Gus. I really don't. Alex, you can listen up. You know, you don't have to be so fucking uptight all the fucking time. Miles, I mean, I really love him as a character. I do, but I just know if I knew him in real life, he would piss me off with how disorganized and impromptu he is. Man, get your life together. Charlie, to me, is the perfect mix of Miles and Alex. Like, he's just a balance of it all. And I really, really enjoyed that character so much. And I kind of like Nora too, and she kind of matched quite a bit of me. I saw myself a little in her, even though she's a tall blonde. Neither. a lot of her like life choices and thought processes I understood deeply, related to her deeply, and I wish to have a Charlie someday. The reason why I gave it 4.75 instead of 5 is one thing and one thing only. Libby. Oh, she pissed me off. Oh, she pissed me off. I don't like people who are too chaotic in a way that they're so self-absorbed. Moving on to the very last book will be the best book I read so far this year. And the one that put me in a reading slump because nothing could match its energy. Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The thing that I have to admit is I used to play tennis. I still love tennis, and this book made me want to come back to it. This gave me a lot of Challengers vibes, but also Taylor Jenkins Reid just writes complex female characters better than anyone, in a way where you can understand her flaws. You don't have to like them, but you accept her nonetheless, and you understand her, and you relate to her, and you still feel for her, even though she has those flaws. The issue, I think, with a lot of complex female characters is they're written in a way where it's difficult to empathize with them. And I think Taylor Jenkins Reid just excels at writing a character very complex, yet you can't help but feel for them. And combine it with like my favorite sport. And also the ending, at first I like cried when I read it, and like as a very competitive person myself, made me cry with rage at first, but then I thought about it a lot, and then I cried with acceptance. It's an incredible book. I enjoyed it so much. It made me laugh, it brought me tears. I mean, just no one does it like Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love her so much and her writing. But I would advise, if you don't know anything about tennis, to just look up the most basic rules of the game and terminology before reading the book, so that you're not lost. Because even though it's not like the most important thing and you kind of understand it, I personally know that when you don't know something, you kind of focus on it a little too much, and it gets distracting to an extent where you don't comprehend everything else you're reading because you're so over fixated on this one thing that you don't understand. So I think it's just better to learn the most basic rules of it all, the most basic terminology, and then once you read it, you can fully immerse yourself in the story and not get distracted by this stuff. So that's everything I read in the first 4 months of 2026. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!